Hi, it's Jen again, and it's the end of week 8 for the OtomeJam, and I'm here to kind of give you my final thoughts about the whole process. Truthfully told, this week there's nothing really for me to show you as far as progress goes. It was just a bunch of really visually boring things, like editing dialogue for grammatical errors with editorial notes that were given to me by Leperin. Thank you so much for that. And you've taught me so much about the English language that as a native English language speaker I didn't know. So thank you. And implementing the art that was provided to me by Maggie. Thank you so much for your contribution to the prologue art. To me, it fits perfectly with what I had envisioned. You're an awesome artist, so thank you. And correcting some last minute bugs. Thank you, Zeal, for teaching me so much about programming and being patient with me and my really terrible, clumsy use of GitHub. I am sorry for those times that I overwrite your edits. Yeah, I learned a lot from OtomeJam, and really what made the experience for me was being able to work with some other creators, some other talented, skilled folks that were able to just teach me new things, broaden my perspective, and for that, the experience was invaluable to me, and I would definitely do it again. Now for the bad side, I guess, or the downside, the con to working in OtomeJam. And this is gonna seem kind of out of nowhere because it's not like I was feeling it during the process. This is something that just hit me on Wednesday. So I've been going pretty hard, working on OtomeJam. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I think that the demo is a complete experience that gives the player a good idea of my vision for this game going forward. But everything comes at a price, and for me, I'm paying that price now. I am going into my burnout phase of the cycle. What exactly is burnout to me? Burnout to me is a fatigue that sets in when I've been going too hard, where I lose motivation, I feel mentally fatigued, because it's not like creating these games is like a physically arduous process. So I think mental fatigue is something that we can push ourselves to go through. You can kind of phone in the motions, but that joy of the process is no longer there. And in the past, a lot of times I would work through burnout because I had deadlines or because I felt like it was just like some kind of like weakness that I just needed to power through. And it ended up with me creating pages and pages and just mountains of work that I was not proud of, that I did not enjoy making. So some people, I think, might not call this burnout because they can still work through it. For me, it's not like a crippling state where I can't pull myself out of bed and I can't, I guess, use the powers of my mental fortitude to overcome. But I realized that like doing so is kind of like a pointless, there's no positive side to like doing those things other than like if I was working for somebody else, like I would be able to keep producing and making my deadlines. But to me, I would just be kind of producing very garbage, let's just be honest. I would just be phoning it in. I would be not enjoying the process. In fact, I would be actively disliking the process. And everything that I create will reflect that. And for a long time, I thought this was just part of the being a professional versus being a hobbyist, having a job, versus like, just having fun. And I thought to myself, well, having a job isn't supposed to be fun. And being able to power through doing stuff when you're not in the mood is part of being a professional. And these things are true. And to be a professional working in a studio, I'm sure you do have to do these things. But I'm working on a project for myself. And I'm working on it for the joy that it brings me. So I don't have to go through burnout anymore. Because at some point with burnout, I reached a point of no return where I am so devoid of physical, in-person human contact and outside meaningful interactions, and I become so absorbed in my own self because I'm just working in my own projects, and I get so my perspective becomes so insular that I can start just going in these kind of very dark places. And it's not like necessarily suicidal. I should preface this whole talk by saying I am not a health expert. I am not a mental expert. And some of the terms that I could be using, like burnout or depression, I might not be using them in a medically accurate way, but I just don't have any other words to describe what I'm going through. So take everything I say as with a grain of salt. I'm just explaining my experience and why I can no longer do art professionally, and just how I deal with it now. So basically, I'm an extreme introvert. I can go months and months and years with being mostly solitary. But it's not healthy for me. I might feel like in a good place, or like I might feel like I'm fine 99% of the time. But as far as for the overall my long-term mental health, it will catch up with me eventually, and the changes in my personality, my mood, and my outlook will be subtle, and it won't be like an overnight thing, and I won't even necessarily feel it happening to me, but at some point I will reach this kind of like point of no return where a lot of things will just take a very negative spiral. I won't be able to just phone it in anymore, and I'll reach kind of like this extreme burnout phase where I can't keep producing and I will have to take a long break. And at that point, my whole life has been so built around doing art and doing the process and phoning it in that it's like I almost have nothing left. And so it's not just a matter of like, oh, take a vacation, watch some Netflix for a week or a month, eat ice cream in bed or whatever, and that'll solve all your problems. It's like, no. These things don't even interest me anymore because I haven't been participating in, normal media consumption. That like my eyes and my brain just kind of glass over, and it's like I can't even just enjoy things anymore. And I'm not the type of person who like really enjoys just like doing nothing. I enjoy being productive. So taking that away from me like makes me feel listless and restless and even more depressed. So let me give you an idea of like what exactly happens when I start feeling depressed. It's not that a giant cloud comes over me and everything's just like in shades of gray and I just sit in front of the window going, and I have no reason for like having negative feelings. Like I actually rationalize and justify these negative feelings quite articulately in some ways, like where I can feel very justified in like having bleak outlooks on life. It doesn't really take that much research to find atrocities. It doesn't really take that much research to find negativity. And so if I am feeling bad about myself or I'm feeling insecure, I could look up all kinds of topics, adoptee topics, Asian American topics, just, people spewing hateful, misinformed rhetoric. And if I want to take that personally, then I can take that personally. People who will say, terrible things about Western creators or non-authentically, Japanese creators, using a highly influenced manga anime style. Their work is all trash, I can read about that and say, yes, my work is all trash. And it can all feel very valid. So if my mindset is in a mindset of like feeling insecure and wanting to put words to these feelings, then I can do that quite easily. And it can create kind of this ongoing just downward spiral if you want to seek these things out. If I'm feeling that, humanity is a lost cause, again, there's no end to the amount of atrocities that I can find, that I can learn about, just historically and just ongoing. And I can feel like, yeah, humanity is a lost cause. But once I can get myself out of this negative spiral, and I can start having just interactions with people, just regular little daily interactions with people, I am reminded of how much I love humanity as a whole. And I love the fragile, creative, sensitive core to what I feel like it is an embodiment of a shared human experience. And I can focus on that in my art and in my appreciation of stories. So a lot of it is like the lens. You can take information, data, and you can interpret it in all kinds of different ways. You can't really see things in an unbiased way, how we interpret, the things around us. So a lot of that is affected by my mental state, and a lot of my mental state can be influenced by different cycles, whether that be my creative cycle, where my brain just needs a break from the creative process, and if I don't give it that time to take a break, then it's just gonna start going down a very tired and cynical path. And some of it can be related to seasonal cycles. My vitamin D levels, my blood, I got a blood test to test my vitamin D levels, and they were really, 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 really low. So taking vitamin D supplement was like the first step I had to take in order to be able to just regulate my moods. I was fighting a chemical imbalance that no amount of mental fortitude was going to be able to work its way through. And I knew there was something wrong with me because I had gone through so much self-reflection and so much work on myself, that when that all started to kind of unravel for no given reason, I said something's wrong. And I did get tested for some different things. So, and then part of it can also be, for me as a biological female, related to monthly female cycles. So being aware of these reasons that kind of trigger my negative moods, being able to kind of like look for patterns, is what's helped me finally be able to kind of come to a point where it's like I understand what's happening with me when my search history starts to go into like apocalyptic levels. I know what's happening to me and why I'm like kind of going down these paths of kind of self-destructive thought processes. And a lot of it, going back to this OtomeJam, sorry for going on this big tangent, has to do with burnout. And so, although I really loved the experience, for me, I'm going to have to be smart about how I handle these things in the future and limit myself to the amount of jams that I participate in, possibly to 1 a year at max. And that might be really pushing it. I'm going to have to see how long it kind of takes me to get out of this burnout process, because I had been doing really good working on Soul Union to kind of pace myself in a way that I felt was pretty sustainable. And I did have a little bit of burnout towards the end when I was working on the epilogues, because I was fighting through just trying to get it done at some point, because I was like, I'm so close to finishing. So there was a little bit of times where I can kind of look at that part of the game and be like, I should probably revisit that because I wasn't really doing my best there. So I think for the rest of the year, definitely for the rest of the year, I'm not going to participate in any more jams. I'm going to be working on kind of slowly doing some creative stuff, because I feel like not doing any creative stuff really makes me feel super depressed, because it takes away like a big portion of like what I derive joy from in my everyday life. But I'm going to try to really give myself plenty of room to recover. So this past week I've really only done like a couple unfinished sketches, just a couple little edits on the game, and I haven't really worked on it much at all past Wednesday when I finished implementing the dialogue edits and that final bit of intro art. I'm going to document my burnout recovery, because I think this is just as important, if not even more important than the process itself, is learning how to have a sustainable and healthy process. And if you do overextend yourself and start suffering from burnout, how to recognize it and how to get through it in a healthy way. And I feel like these things are not really talked about a whole lot, because we're just kind of expected to be like automatons and just be able to keep cranking out production. And if you can't, what's wrong with you? You should be able to do that if you're a professional. Well, art is the process. And I know I'm going to sound like kind of like a fine artist or something, like, going off in some kind of like woo-woo land right now. But it is a process. And these creative process they take more out of you than just, doing some type of labor that you're not so invested in. That this is a big personal investment, doing these creative processes. So you're gonna have to take it easy in some places. It's just a lot of mental energy, a lot of emotional energy that goes into these things, that you can't just keep going hard. At some point you have to give yourself time to kind of like just be able to mentally rest and repair. And if you can do this in like small cycles, like daily cycles, weekly cycles, even monthly cycles, it's going to be an easier recovery than going years and then of pushing yourself to a point of, well, now I gotta take 5 years off because I've just like kind of destroyed myself in my life, with putting off this reconciliation of having to deal with this burnout. Now I'm gonna have to make huge life changes, and at least that's what I had to go through when I took a break for 5 years. And sometimes, when I would like work hard on a book for like a year or something, and I have to take like almost like a half a year off of just being like depressed. Like, but is that worth it? Maybe I should find something in my everyday life that I can manage myself a little bit better. Those are just my thoughts on it, and I wanted to share because I feel like it's something that wasn't really talked to in my group. We just all kind of, encouraged each other to keep just like going on, just keep producing. And in some ways, being isolated during burnout is just kind of probably one of the worst things that you can do, at least for me, because that's when I can really go down those like deep, dark spirals of self-doubt and negativity, of just finding horrible things about myself or confirming, suspicions that I have, or insecurities. And there's a never-ending amount of, things that I could find for any of those, insecurities that could just keep perpetuating those tapes in my head. And when you start going down that path, it's very hard to undo. Then everything anybody says that's positive can be easily dismissed. Oh, you're just saying that because you're my friend, or oh, you're just saying that because you feel sorry for me, or oh, you're just saying that because you don't want to believe that we're all doomed. So yeah, it's a lot of work to undo those negative feelings once they start taking traction, and I started spending a lot of time trying to validate them. It takes a lot of work to kind of undo all that. All right, well, I think that's kind of a good place to end, and I will be back to kind of just check in next week, to tell you how my post burnout recovery is going. So take care, enjoy the process, and remember to do it in a healthy and sustainable way, and give yourself permission to recover. Bye.